Bayer has announced it's going to cough up $2 billion to settle future lawsuits filed by customers who are exposed to their cancer-causing weed killer Roundup. How ridiculous. That is just a drop in the bucket of what this should cost. This is on top of $10 billion the company pledged last year to settle existing cases, people that are already dying of cancer. But if I look at the facts, there's no way that $2 billion part of it is going to work out. But I have with me somebody who's followed this case for a very long time. And Carey Gillam is an investigative journalist who's been closely following this litigation. Her new book, The Monsanto Papers, takes a deep dive into the lasting impact of the Roundup saga. She joins me now. Carey, we've been covering lawsuits about Monsanto. As a matter of fact, full disclosure, I've actually been involved in the lawsuit, so I know a little bit about it. I think I've taken 4 depositions in this case. But I'm interested to know, you've been an investigative journalist a long time. Tell me what you think are the important talking points here. What do you think, what grabs you about this case?
Oh my goodness. I mean, this has gone on for so long. Really, what I've written about and what so many people have just been stunned by is what the internal Monsanto documents, the discovery documents that came out during the periods leading up to the trial, the 3 trials. The discovery documents showed us just decades of deception on Monsanto's part about the safety of its weed-killing products, Roundup, glyphosate-based Roundup. And this as do many of the people who've been following the case. Monsanto was shown through its own internal records to be discussing ghostwriting scientific studies and manipulating regulators, manipulating the EPA and others, and really denying and hiding the cancer risk of its weed-killing products.
One thing you talk about in your book is the all-out attack on anybody that would criticize the company. They would take scientists that had plenty of information that was all bad for the company, and they would make that, they'd do everything they could to have that professor or that scientist lose their job. The other thing they would do is hire PR firms, and they would take spins by creating these front groups. And this is what you talk about in your book. Tell me about the front groups. How did that work to where they could tell the American public, nothing to see here, just keep moving, everything's okay?
Yeah, I mean, this was really alarming. This was a network of front groups, organizations that were secretly funded by Monsanto and are secretly funded by, other companies as well, really to do, their dirty work and to go out and to attack, harass, write terrible articles about people like me or journalists at the New York Times or scientists with the International Agency for Research on Cancer to try to smear and intimidate people. Monsanto made it clear in its documents they didn't want it to look like these attacks were coming from them. They wanted it to look like they were independent voices that were, speaking out and calling Carey Gillam a liar, or Danny Hakim at the New York Times, a science denier, that sort of thing. But they also engaged in really alarming practices of ghostwriting articles that appeared in like Forbes magazine, or engineering op-eds and editorials and letters to the editors that were being sent to newspapers around the country to talk about, how safe Monsanto's products were and how wrong scientists were who associated their products with cancer. And these were all being engineered secretly by Monsanto. And we found that out in these documents as well.
Wasn't this really all about selling seeds? I mean, when you step back from it, in order to sell seeds, these geo seeds, geo-manufactured seeds, you had to have this thing, and this thing was Roundup, and the Roundup would be co-sold with the seed. So they sold seeds all over the planet, and they said, hey, by the way, you got to have Roundup to have the seed. But we miss the story if we don't understand this is about spreading geoseeds all over the planet, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that really is. Monsanto introduced glyphosate-based products, Roundup and other herbicides, in the 1970s, and their patent was expiring in the year 2000, and they were looking for a strategy to really hold on to and grow their market share. And they had all this technology, and they introduced genetically engineered soybeans and cotton and corn and canola and all sorts of products that were designed to be sprayed directly over the top while they were growing with Roundup. So these Roundup-ready crops really help perpetuate the use of glyphosate-based Roundup products. And we saw and we have seen just this exponential growth of Roundup use around the world, so much so, and I wrote about this in my first book, and it was an issue at trial, that Roundup products, glyphosate-based herbicides, are ubiquitous. They're found now in our air, our water, our food, our own bodies. We have a chemical that's been linked to cancer that is almost impossible to escape exposure to now at this point.
Yeah, it's being found. It's being found in baby food. It's being found in beer. It's being found in cereal. And it all begins with the idea, if you can put these seeds all over the country, all over the planet, here's what ends up happening. A farmer, say in India, gets seeds from Monsanto. And once he gets the seeds and plants those seeds, he then has to do business with Monsanto going forward because he can't move from the GO seed to his regular seeds. And it's shocking that we're missing the whole point here, that this is about Monsanto saying we've got this whole world crisis of food, which was a lie. And they said we can create more food by this seed and by using this awful thing called Roundup. That's the way I see this, my 10,000 takeaway on that. And I said, I've been working this case a long time. Do you disagree with that? And would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, that's very definitely a very big part of the evolution of this story and how this chemical came to be so widely used, and how we have now 100,000 people in the U.S. who have claims against Bayer, which bought Monsanto in 2018, alleging that they developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from exposure to Roundup. And so, as you mentioned, Bayer's agreed to pay out about $10 billion to settle those cases. They're trying to get a deal to pay $2 billion to settle future cases. The company has lost a lot of market share and a lot of investor confidence because of all of this. It's a very big corporate story. It's a very big public health story. And it's a very tragic story about what happens when corporations, push out these products and regulators do very little to rein them in.
Carrie, the Monsanto Papers was very well done, and I want to have you back on where we can. There's so much detail here. There's so much to this story. But I want to thank you. For your first book, Whitewash, was excellent, and now we have the Monsanto Papers out there. Everybody should read this if you want a real close look at how things work in corporate America sometimes. Thank you for joining me, Carrie.
Thanks, Mike.
And finally tonight, some good news. 4 states have joined together on a fracking ban near Delaware River, and I have Farron Cousins back to talk about it. Okay, here's the fracking industry saying, look, we have all this science. We know it doesn't hurt anybody. This is fracking that is putting toxins in the Susquehanna River, where we ask the question, what are the toxins? And they say, we don't have to tell you. It's moving into the drinking water that serves more than 1 million people up and down the Susquehanna River. What's your take on this story?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about potentially at least 1 million people being poisoned if fracking was allowed in this area. And thankfully, you have these 4 states, Pennsylvania, New York, Jersey, and Delaware, came together and said, listen, let's all agree that nowhere along this Delaware River basin are we going to allow any fracking. They did it. It's wonderful, but we have to go further than this, right? I mean, you don't have any major party other than, I guess, the Green parties who have banning fracking as a part of their platform. This form of energy is, according to some reports, actually dirtier than coal throughout its entire lifespan. And a lot of it has to do with all of the toxins going into the ground that we don't even know about. We know there's diesel fuel. We know there's all kinds of carcinogens, but we don't even know the extent.
One thing we do know, we've seen the movie Gasland, right?
Right.
Where water's coming out of a spigot and they're able to set the water on fire. Now, that is what is happening, whether these folks whether the industry wants to admit it or not. People aren't stupid. They've seen it firsthand. The trouble is these folks have pumped so much money into the politicians up around that area. The industry, the energy industry has pumped so much money into these politicians. To get them to do this, it's a big, big accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Farron, thanks for joining me, okay?
Thank you.
That's all for tonight. Find us on Twitter and Facebook at facebook.com/RT America's Lawyer. You can watch all RT America programs on DirecTV Channel 321 and also stream them live on YouTube. And be sure to check out RT's new portable app where you can watch all your favorite shows. I'm Mike Papantonio, and this is America's Lawyer, where every week we tell you the stories that corporate media is ordered not to tell because their advertisers won't let them. Have a great night.